The Weapon World. Welcome, gentle listener, I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and faces of the Warhammer 40k setting, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. If you wish to see the channel flourish, and possibly take on bigger topics and get better resources, then like and subscribe. But also, consider joining our Patreon, or throwing a one-off tip in the form of a super thanks, if I have indeed earned your bounty. And today, as I ease back into things, I wish to share a tantalizing little piece of lore I found in the most recent White Dwarf magazine, released by Games Workshop. A breakdown of a system in the Chalnath Expanse, the defenses of the Cassandras System. I find it a relaxing and deeply elucidating expose on that war-torn refuge in the sea of the Imperium Nihilus. And I have to admit, it's great to be back. And so, to quote, "The Weapon World, Colossal Guardian of the Chalnath Expanse." In the southern reaches of the Chalnath Expanse, amongst the systems that make up the Ronin cluster, lies the Cassandras System, cut off from contact with Holy Terror by the Great Rift, and with tumultuous empiric tides making reinforcement from the rest of the Imperium Nihilus hazardous. The worlds of the Cassandras System can look only to their own defences to guard them against the terror of Xenos and heretics that circle Hungary in the dark. Yet those defences are mighty indeed. Several of the Cassandra System's worlds are heavily fortified or guarded. On Futility, a moon orbiting the jungle world of Kesarin, the cratered and dusty landscape is scarred by excavation sites established by tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Auger-sighted auto-turrets are built into the pit heads. Clades of battle servitors are deployed inside tunnels branching from the main bores, and cohorts of cyborg Skitarii are garrisoned in ore-processing plants. Terminus Overwatch, meanwhile, is an auger system deployed at the system's edge, which is protected by flotillas of picket ships, and the ocean world of Rorgan is said to harbour secretive installations on its seabed, in which sleepless guardians trawl the tides for the unauthorized or the careless. All, however, pale in comparison to the weapons and defences of the Hive world Vulcus. The planet has much to protect. Its mineral wealth is plentiful and includes exotic elements found nowhere else in the Voronin cluster. City-sized strip mines are gouged across expanses of steep or into the roots of ice-capped mountains. On the slopes of active volcanoes, heavily armoured extractors glut themselves on pyroclastic output, and nests of adamantine pipes suckle at hot springs for trace chemicals. Sprawling forests are also reaped for abundant supplies of dense timber. Numerous hives of macro-industrial logging and manufacturing complexes feed on Vulcus's raw materials, and the planet's immense and widespread industrial processes convert them into an array of produce and material. In low orbit around Vulcus, void defense platforms guard the approach to the world. The planet's hives and manufacturing complexes are crenellated with armoured bastions and heavy ordnance emplacements. Anti-orbital cannons and flak batteries, focused laser arrays, and ceramite-shielded missile silos stand ready, crews and machine spirits alert to invasion. Layered energy shields throb with power, casting a radius so fierce it causes localized storm cells to form. One hive, however, Fasilicus, boasts the planet's greatest and perhaps original defense emplacement, the massive ballistas, or simply the Great Gun. Categorized as an orbital cannon, the Great Gun dwarfs even the largest anti-orbital ordnance. Its enormous twin barrels rise so high they must be heated to prevent a build-up of ice where the muzzles graze the stratosphere. The weapon's foundations are miles in diameter. The shock waves and cinder storms that vent explosively from the great gun structures with each firing mean that for miles further out is a blackened waste of ancient ruins and precarious temporary settlements. Beyond those, Haloing the great gun's hazardous radius are the districts of Hive Basilicus itself, amongst which Cascabel is preeminent. Under the upper levels of the highest districts lies the Great Beneath, a mire of workings and sumps populated by underclasses. The Hive is threaded by a network of Maglev lines and their fortified stations, connecting its districts to each other and the massive ballistas. Outside Hive Basilicus's encircling walls is a band of shanty Habspoors and light fortifications known as the Undermuzzle Barons. The Great Gun, GG6928E/1034. Historical records on Vulcus barely go back more than a millennium. The massive ballistas dates back far further. Some techno-archaeologists believe its origins might even lie before the birth of the Imperium. The weapon's bracing anchors are thought to delve almost to the planet's mantle. From their surface foundations, the gun's structures rise like a mountain. Unguent reservoirs, coolant shrines, arrestor gantries, powder warehouses, generatora, shield projectors, astrometeorological sensor fanes, garrison towers, and myriad other structures jostle in growing abundance. All are encrusted with untold years of additional architecture and linked by creaking webs of walkways, spiral stairs, and lift cages. Effectively, a district unto itself, sitting at the center of Hive Basilicus's sprawl. The great gun's spires are towering macro cranes. Its plazas are gargantuan gantries layered one above the other. Its streets are yards-wide power conduits, and its citizens are the thousands of toiling laborers, servitors, and tech priests that see to its operation. Districts of Hive Basilicus. The wide ring of ruin that immediately encircles a massive ballistas is known by no name, if indeed it ever had one. The area is likely to have formed part of Hive Basilicus's multiple districts that stretch from this blackened halo for many miles. Each district is dedicated to a separate element or process in the construction of the enormous plasma shells fired by the great gun. Amongst them are the ash pits, where chemical reagents are combined to form explosive propellant. The district's huge subterranean silos are filled with centuries of furnace waste. Their upper layer, a rolling desert of charred hillocks, pocked by half-buried watchtowers standing sentinel over hazardous pockets of crumbling ash, known to have swallowed expeditions without a trace. Then there is Magna Armata, in whose cathedra-like manufactura charges and fuse caps the size of hab blocks are carefully assembled. The district of Fabricum Arimenta is filled with the heat and deafening noise of the furnaces that forge the enormous shell casings. The glow from rivulets of liquid metal funneled along a maze of gullies, as well as the flash and flicker of countless sprawling emissions, throw constant changing shadows across its dense thoroughfares. The Great Beneath. GB41909NE_0843. The upper portions of Hive Basilicus are where most of its industry thrives. Under these is the Great Beneath, a realm of sumps and slimes, slick gantries, fetid vermin and criminal gangs. Ill-defined in the minds of those who toil above, it is a grim and shadowy environment of twisting, canted alleys, dripping tunnels, crumbling slums, and an ever-present semi-liquid filth that rains down from above. The Great Beneath is ignored by many officials, except when tithes of laborers are harvested or purges of malcontents are conducted. Here dwell the lowliest of Hive Basilicus's inhabitants, the downtrodden, the undernourished, the mutated, and more besides. Their lives are expended to grease the continual grinding mechanisms of the great gun. The Great Beneath is the rank bilge of the Hive, a mire of concentrated misery, both physical and spiritual. The Maglev Network, MN5237E_2465. Each compact of the great gun's plasma shells is loaded onto immense armored carriages and thrice blessed before being sent on its way to the next district. It is along the shielded network of the Hive's Maglev lines that they are moved. The network's reinforced trains shuttle slowly between the districts of Hive as well, running from numerous locations around the Great Gun, all the way out to the Undermuzzle Barrens. The rails run through many checkpoints, supply depots and grand stations, each with its own shield generators and heavy weapons nests, dedicated companies of garrison soldiers, conclaves of tech priests, and zealous congregations of ecclesiastical prelates. The carriages that form the trains are huge machines, like articulated bastions guarded by their own sentinels, who patrol the train's mazes of passages. Cascabel, C5279SW_3468. The capital district of Cascabel is where the final elements of the Great Gun's ordnance are assembled. The district lies at the massive cannon's southernmost foundations, nearest the great breach where complete plasma shells are delivered amidst chorals of auto hymns blared from vox emitters, as well as the cheers of a populace whipped into frenzy by Cascabel's numerous priests. The assembly complex is an enormous domain of multi-leveled forge shrines, gantries and piers the size of a modest orbital dock. It is in Cascabel that the greatest pageantry and celebration take place. During the extremely ritualized day of firing, such highly charged moments are overseen and ruthlessly shepherded from countless auto-shrines, vox relays, and pacifier barracks. There are sub-districts that are effectively the sole province of local arbitrator stations, adeptus mechanicus sub-forges, or ecclesiastical shrines, their influence zealously guarded. The Undermuzzle Barons, UB2556E_7265. Beyond Hive Fasilicus's outermost districts, stretching from its thick curtained walls to a ragged fringe in the wilderness, is a broad swathe of fire-blackened ruins and cratered bedrock. This region lies under the enormous twin muzzles of the Great Gun. Depending on the weapon's facing on its day of firing, one large segment of the barrens is battered by the release of energy. Horrific pressure waves cracking ferrocrete, sonic aftershocks and sheets of chem-laced flame flood the area, and lasting localized storms rage once the abused atmosphere rushes back in the aftermath. Despite the lethal location, many ramshackle settlements are swiftly built in the wake of destruction. Hurriedly evacuated pilgrims, refugees, and outcasts swarm back to pick over their former lives, as well as the corpses of those who could not escape once the strident warning bells began to toll. The Undermuzzle Barons also support a rough hodgepodge of light fortifications, temporary bastions, armoured checkpoints, trench lines, and mustering stations. Few soldiers relish deployment to this benighted region, with its poor fire positions and opportunities for ambush, as well as dangerously unstable remnant structures. Cobolith's Corpse, CC3574E_4565. Once the largest of Vulcus's many moons, Cobolith came under assault in years past by orcs under the leadership of War Captain Gulgork. The freebooters planned to use the moon as a base from which to launch an invasion of the Hive world, were violently interrupted when the Great Gun was unleashed in a single volley. The orbital cannon split the moon apart, gigantic chunks of its debris raining down across Vulcus while gravitic tidal forces rocked the world. Devastating quakes and shifting oceanic levels caused widespread death and destruction, as did inferno sparked from blazing specks of the plasma shell that took months to douse. What was left in the void of Cobolith broke up into a dense belt of asteroidal matter despite the death toll on Vulcus. It was believed a worthy price to pay for the annihilation of the orcs. In the decades that followed, it transpired some had survived. They multiplied and spread, although never as unified as under Gulgork. Their makeshift bases on drifting bits of rock allowed many to hide from the infrequent purges undertaken by the system's governor. From their hideouts, many have managed to eke out a living as opportunistic raiders and pirates, forging ships from the debris belt and preying on freighters and traders between Vulcus and the system's Mandeville Point. Okari, 04134E Okari_1265. Outermost of Vulcus's remaining moons, Okari is the site of the system's principal astropathic relay. The orb possesses an atmosphere that is technically breathable, a phenomenon attributed to ancient human terraforming. Rampant industry has polluted its air into a toxic smog. Here, too, there is the taint of orcs, likely remnants of the devastation of Kobolth. Their predations are kept mostly in check by Okari's well-built fortifications and frequent eradication missions. The astropathic relay itself is a gigantic needle-like structure that rises from a fortified asteroid crater bristling with gun batteries. Spreading out from it are numerous barracks complexes, aerodromes, shielded arsenals, and refueling stations. Most supported as what began as encampments, but have grown into substantial settlements, each an array of industrial facilities, hab blocks, and military compounds. Cuminos, K4534NW_0932. Cuminos is the penal world of the Cassandras System, a huge terrestrial planet covered in cool deserts and dust wastes. It possesses a gravity uncomfortable in excess of Terran standards. Its dense atmosphere is frequently racked by intense storms, making reaching and leaving its surface incredibly perilous. Embedded within Cuminos' equatorial mountain range is a colossal prison complex housing transgressors of a number of jurisdictions from the Cassandras System and beyond. The inmates of the penal colony, ranging from the politically outmaneuvered to petty heretics and unstable fanatics, are regularly ferried out into the desert expanse and sent to carry out forced labor in sprawling quarries. From there, they are tasked with extracting rare minerals to be used as focusing crystals for heavy laser weapons. Rumor has it that the latest of these excavations has uncovered a series of previously unknown ruins, the origin of which remains a mystery. More than one deployment of elite troops dispatched to hunt down missing mining parties have returned empty-handed, with no trace of the prisoners or their warders. So far, the losses have not been missed. There remains a steady supply of inmates, and many soldiers who have complained of deployment to the Undermuzzle Barons have been swiftly reassigned to Cuminos. Kesarin, K5431E_1465. The third planet of the Cassandras System, Kesarin's continents are almost entirely covered in temperate rainforest. Its flora is exceptionally hardy and fast-growing. Much of it is poisonous to humans. Despite numerous preventative measures, cocktails of their toxins have made their way past atmospheric filtration plants and into potable water stores. These factors, coupled with the planet's mountainous topography, saw Kesarin put to use as a training ground for Astromilitarum infantry and recon regiments. Prior to the opening of the Great Rift, numerous barracks, staging grounds, and training facilities were carved out of the ever-encroaching jungle. Attempts were also made to establish high-level outposts across swathes of interconnected canopies, as well as subterranean complexes threaded between the iron-hard root balls of certain species that defied easy clearing. However, the escalation of conflict throughout the Chalnath Expanse has seen these facilities largely abandoned, and in the absence of human life, the jungle has begun to reclaim them. End quote. I hope you enjoyed that even a slight amount as much as I did. Now, I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. Like and subscribe, tip if I've earned your bounty. But most importantly of all, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.